are you? You haven't been on my channel in a while. You wanna say hello? Okay. She's just not feeling it. You do you. Hey guys, so today we're gonna be talking about some common myths or misconceptions about psychology, the brain, mental illnesses, all that jazz. And these are things kind of reinforced through something called pop psychology, which is basically psychology concepts that are used in like news articles or books or magazines, movies, just media in general that aren't always accurate, but they're psych concepts that are for the general public. So they're kind of simplified and often wrong. So we're going to talk about a couple things that they get wrong. When I list them out, you'll see, and hopefully you walk away from this video not believing them anymore. First myth, which is one of my biggest pet peeves when people say this, is that we only use 10% of our brain. That is just not true. Why would we only use 10% of it? Like, the origin to this is actually really interesting, however. About 100 years ago, there was a psychologist named William James, and he said that he doubts that most people reach 10% of their intellectual potential, and that kind of, you know, translated into, well, that means we only use 10% of our brain. So that's kind of where it originated. Also, the idea that early researchers of the brain didn't understand 90% of the brain. They didn't know what 90% of the brain did. They only really knew about 10% of it. And to this day, we still don't know a whole lot, but obviously things have changed. We've come a long way in studying the brain. We know way more than just 10% of it. So those two things kind of, you know, paved a path for people to be like, oh, well, we only use 10% of our brains then. Also, just a side note, people think that Albert Einstein kind of created this idea in this myth and said that we only use 10% of it. However, there's no record that he actually ever said that, so. Yet, media and books love to say that we only use 10%. In fact, there's like psychology books, like actual books meant to teach people, and it was like how to grow to your fullest potential, and it'll make statements like, we only use 10% of our brains, here's how you can learn to use more of it, and it's like, no. Myth number 2, I'm only covering a couple today, by the way, so this might be kind of a short video, but again, I kind of want it to be another series on my channel, so you tell me if you like that idea. Anyway, myth number 2 is that people who have schizophrenia have multiple personalities. Now, this is also reinforced with the image of the crazy person in media. So there's a specific episode, I thought about this because of this episode of It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, which love that show, no hate to it. There's a scene where Dee is, you know, creating these different accents, which it's clear that she's creating different personalities, and then afterwards claims to be schizophrenic.
Just let me handle this, okay? I'll act crazy and then he'll prescribe them to me. I've always relied upon the kindness of strangers. Years ago, I tried to burn my college roommate down to the box springs whilst she was sleeping, and now I've a hankering to do it again. I'm schizophrenic.
And to me, like, obviously that episode is it's called Psycho Pete Returns or Comes Back or something like that. Obviously that episode is kind of offensive to me. I'm not so like irate about it, but that's just a good example of how media, you know, enables these kind of myths to stay true. It's just not true that people who have schizophrenia have multiple personalities. Dissociative identity disorder is completely different, which that used to formerly be called multiple personality disorder. Now it's DID, and there's still controversy around it, whether it's real or not. People, even researchers and psychologists, psychiatrists, some believe that the patients are faking it, which that's really controversial. I'm gonna do a whole video on it, don't worry. But the typical portrayal of someone who has a mental illness in media is multiple personalities or schizophrenia, which they don't go hand in hand. Like, yes, you know, schizophrenia, people who have schizophrenia may hear voices and things, but that doesn't mean that they're hearing different personalities, and they're not, you know, they're always their own person, they're always themselves. It's just they have, you know, some other hallucinations going on. That doesn't mean that they have multiple people living inside their head, you know, just because they hear voices. The next myth that is kind of still being studied right now as we speak, and there's a lot of research on it. I would do a Google search if you're interested in it, because it goes both ways. There is evidence behind it, but there's also evidence debunking it. But that is left brain versus right brain. We've all heard the concept of, oh, I'm more logical, so I'm left-brained, or I'm more creative, so I'm mostly right-brained. When in reality, they actually perform more similar tasks than they do different tasks. They just perform in different ways. And it's so much more complicated than being that black and white. You can't just say, well, I'm mostly left-brained. Like, that doesn't make sense because you use all of your brain, you use your right side too. but there have been studies that show that certain functions of each hemisphere perform better in some people. So it really depends on the person, but you can't just say it in a black and white blanket term of left brain or right brained. I mean, if you identify as one or the other, it's not a big deal, but just the science behind it is a little bit more complicated, and there's just so much research out there about this. And the last one I'm going to talk about is something that I was actually saving for a whole video. This is one that I didn't find on the internet. It's just one that I'm going to tell you because it is a common, not necessarily myth, but I get asked this so much that I wanted to tack it on the end of this video, is that if you have a mental illness, you can't become a counselor, because why would someone who has problems be able to help people with other problems? I get this question so much. So many of you come to me and say, you know, I have depression, do you think I could still study psychology? Or I have these, you know, borderline personality disorder, do you think I could still become a psychologist? And it's, of course you can. Like, I think you shouldn't question that. I think people who go through their own struggles and their own mental illnesses make the best counselors and the best psychologists and psychiatrists, honestly. That's my opinion, but of course, of course you can become a psychologist if you have depression or anxiety or any other mental illness that you have. Of course you can do that. Like, if that's your passion and you want to help people like you, that's the right kind of motivation that you want to have as someone going into the field. Because obviously, unless you're going in the research route or a psychiatrist route, there's not a lot of money in doing psychology for a living, honestly. Like, it's comfortable, but it's not known to be like lawyer, doctor status, you know? So the people who go into psychology are really doing it for other reasons, and that's mostly to help people. And I think the people who have gone through something similar can help others the best, you know? And obviously that's my opinion, but I think it's completely fair to say, I know a lot of people who went to school with me who have their own struggles, their own mental illnesses, when they would open up about it, and they're going to be the best people to talk to about those things and other things because they've been there, they understand. So if you're discouraged because you feel like you won't be able to help people because you haven't been able to help yourself, well, don't be, because you are going to be great at that if that's what you want to do and where your passion is. And honestly, throughout the process of education through psychology, you often get help yourself. Part of getting hours accumulated for your certification, I haven't gone through that process yet, but if you go to therapy and like counseling while you're in grad school, accumulating those hours to get certified, that actually counts for hours to, you know, the accumulation of hours for your certification. So basically you're getting rewarded to go to therapy. They encourage it because they want you to understand what it's like to be on the other side. And I think that's awesome. Like, that in itself is like, hell yeah, you get to go to therapy and then get hours to get certified. Like, at least that's how it works in California and where I am and everything. I don't know if it's like that all over the world or in other states. If you do know, please let me know down below. But yeah, that's kind of it. Don't be discouraged. So those are like 4 common myths about psychology and everything that I found really interesting. Obviously there's a million more that I found that I could definitely do another video on, so let me know if you want me to do that in a little series here on this channel. I know I've promised so many series and so many part 2s to so many videos, so I gotta like get on that. I know I'm slacking a little bit, but anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed. Please leave me your like myths that you've discovered about psychology or the brain or mental illnesses down below. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.